I'm going to be talking to you about books that have disappointed me or that didn't quite meet my expectations for whatever reason. Is there anything worse than that? Is there anything worse? You anticipate this book that you're going to read is going to be either a 4 or 5 star or even beyond that, and it just ends up being either meh or just not good. I think it's weirdly worse when it's just meh. It's just like, that was okay. I don't know about you guys, but when it's just terrible, it's terrible and it's like, well, that was bloody awful. But when it's just meh, especially by an author that you really know that usually hits it for you, if they come out with meh material, it's like, oh really? I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I find it more disappointing when it's just a 3 star, which is very average for me, rather than just terrible. I'd rather it be terrible, because then it's like, when it's just like meh, it's just like you can't even bother to make it bad. Anyway, I'm gonna get into the list that I have. I just want to preface this by saying that these are all my opinions, my views. I don't mean any offense or anything like that. They obviously are going to be negative, so please bear that in mind. If you liked these books that I mentioned, then good for you, great, I love that for you, but this is just me, me, and what I thought. Feel free to disagree or agree. I'm just gonna tell you what I thought about them, honestly, and why they disappointed me or didn't quite hit the mark for me. I'm gonna start off with this one. It's called, and bear with me, so it's got a long title, I've got it in my notes here, Sunderworld Volume 1, The Extraordinary Disappointment of Leopold Berry by Ransom Riggs. Gave this 2 stars, but it's more of like a kind of mid 2 stars, so not a full 2 stars, not a low 2 stars, but like a mid 2 star. This is maybe my fault, because this is a little bit more science fiction. Now, I don't tend to do science fiction. If you know me, it's not my go-to genre. I tend to avoid it, to be honest. I have still got this author on my TBR because there is a book that I really want to read. It's a book series called Miss Peregrine's. Am I saying that right? I'll put it here anyway, because I watched the movie and I did quite like the movie, actually. It was okay. It was better than what I thought it would be. So I was like, okay, let's read the books. So I haven't yet to read the books, but I thought I would read this because it's on his, I think it's his one after Miss Peregrine's. So I thought I'd give it a go, and I didn't really like it. I could tell you what it's about, but honestly, a lot of it just kind of lost me. His mum died when he was quite young, and he lives with his dad, and he doesn't really have a great relationship with his dad. And I think he lives with his brother as well. Those brothers moved out, I think. But anyway, he doesn't have much to do with his brother anyway. Basically, he doesn't have a great family life since his mum died. Oh, it's set in LA. Sorry, I should mention that. It's set in LA in America. And he's driving down one day and he sees things. He sees this like weird kind of apparition thing. And without spoiling it too much, he ends up in this kind of different world. So it's kind of got a bit of magical realism in. He ends up like competing or something to try and like win back something, but it's all to do sorry, I'm not explaining this all too well. He's kept these VHS tapes that his mum used to really enjoy. It was a very limited fantasy TV series and it wasn't really that well known, and it was back in the 80s, and his mum kept these VHSs and he's obsessed with them, like it's his favorite thing. And it wasn't like that well known back in the day, and like he just loves it. That's like his thing, and he's obsessed with it, and he ends up basically going into that world. Sorry if you can hear my washing machine. That's my washing machine. And he kind of gets into this world and he fights, like, I think it's like magical creatures and stuff, and then he kind of goes back into the real world. And yeah, as you can tell, that's not really my thing. And the only thing I will say that I did like about it is that it did have stuff to do with grief, which, as you may or may not know, that's something that I quite like to see. And I thought that side of it was done really well, and I could really relate to him, and because someone who's lost their mum as well, I could really relate to his kind of struggle with that. But aside from that, I was honestly really struggling through this, and as you know, I don't DNF, and I only DNF at the moment. I'm going to try it when I reach my reading goal, then I'm going to start DNFing, but this was hard, this put me in a slump. However, I gave it a 2 star because I could recognise it was written really well. I could recognise that for the right target audience, people who really love science fiction, that kind of thing, I think you would really like this. But for me personally, it was a no. And you're probably thinking, well, why did you pick that up? And honestly, I think it was just because I really like Miss Peregrine's, and I thought maybe it was a bit more like that, but it was like set kind of 80s nostalgia. Maybe I was just going on the vibes. If I'm being honest, maybe that was my problem. That's why I say maybe it's my fault, because I think I just went with the front cover and the vibes, and yeah, I think it's I think it's probably my fault. But this was disappointing. I was hoping it would be at the very least a 3 star. I just couldn't give it a 3 star because I really just didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't happening for me. Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. This is technically a sequel to the first book, which is called Rewitched. Now, I really did like Rewitched. I gave it 4 stars. It's a cozy fantasy series, however you can read them as standalones. I didn't like the sequel. A lot of people seem to really like it. Now I didn't hate it, I gave it a 3 star. What I had a problem with is it was just like the characters were a bit kind of caricature, in that the main character, she was very much a perfectionist. She was very much like things had to be orderly and in her way and a bit of a fusspot. I get what the author was trying to say and I get what she was trying to do with this character, but I just felt like it was a bit annoying at times and it was a bit excess, and I don't know, I just felt like the story didn't go anywhere. There was a bit of found family in it and you think I would love that, and that's why I was just a bit disappointed. It just felt all a bit disjointed at places. Me personally, it just didn't work for me and it just ended up being a bit disappointing because of that. I did feel like a little bit with Rewitched it was like that, but I think with Rewitched I felt like there was just one main character we were focusing on, and I felt like it felt very kind of, you could see yourself through this person, whereas like in this story I felt like only specific people who were like that would fit in with that character. So if you're quite a perfectionist, if you're quite a sort of type A personality but to a point, then you may get on with this better and you may relate to this character. But maybe for me, I struggle with that. I don't think I'm necessarily a type A or type B. I think I'm somewhere in between. I expected a certain amount, and that's the problem with sequels. You expect a certain amount and when the author doesn't give it to you again, you're like, oh. At least I feel that way, and so I was going in with like a 4-5 star prediction and it just was fine. I think I was just a bit disappointed because I remember thinking, okay, like after this book, if this author releases any more in this series, I don't think I'm going to read it. Never rule it out completely, but I just think it just wasn't for me. It's the first time I dipped into cozy fantasy. Like I said, not usually a fantasy reader, but I thought, okay, cozy fantasy I might get on with. And like I said, I was mildly surprised by the first book. I really didn't think I would like it all that much, but the second one unfortunately just didn't really hit it for me, so that's why I ended up giving it a 3 star, which isn't a bad rating. It's just for me that was a bit of a disappointing rating for me. Then we have, and I'm quite sad to say this guys, I'm sad to say this because we have Little Disasters by Sarah Vaughan. If you know me, you know Sarah Vaughan is one of my favourite authors. I do tend to quite like her work. This was a 3 star for me. It wasn't terrible, like I said, 3 star. I know I keep saying this, but it is average. For my rating for her, that's quite bad, if that makes sense. And this was a thriller. I say it like that. I feel like it read more like a contemporary kind of fiction really, or contemporary drama, whatever you want to call it. It tells a story of motherhood. So we have 2 friends and they're both mothers with obviously children of their own, and the one mother gets accused of abusing or neglecting rather her child because a child had hit his head, but they're like, I think you had something to do with it. She's suffering with what ultimately we find out is postnatal depression. That's ultimately what the story is about. I feel like I can't really talk on this. I'm not a mother and I've never gone through something like that, so I feel like I do understand that I can't really have all that much say in it. I'm not really the target audience. I can't really relate to that, and it doesn't mean that it's really hard to explain. I sound really horrible and I don't mean it in a horrible way. It's just I was finding it hard to really kind of like sympathise with being a mother, basically, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. And I think that's what it was. Like, you know, obviously what they went through was horrible and traumatic and all the rest of it. I was finding it hard to really relate to the characters, and it was predominantly about motherhood and what it is to be a parent, not just motherhood but parent and parents as well. So very just about family life and domestic. And I've said this before, but I'm kind of straying away now from domestic thrillers because I realise it's just not really my thing anymore. I was just getting a bit bored of them, and this was just one where I was just a bit bored. It was quite slow paced as well, and normally Sarah Vaughan is quite fast paced or medium to fast paced, but this was, to me anyway, it felt very slow paced. I wasn't really vibing with it. And I think it has a lot to do because I'm not a mum and I don't plan to be a mum, so maybe there is something to that. However, I do think if you're a parent or you're a mother or you want to be a mother, I do think this might be a really good book for you, especially if you went through postnatal depression or, you know, anything like that. I think you may get something out of this and you may relate to it and you may feel seen and heard. So I would recommend it to people with those life experiences or in those life experiences. But for me personally, it just didn't really click. As you may or may not know, I don't really do series. I shy away from them a little bit. I never say no, but I don't tend to go for series. But I made an exception with this because I really loved the first book, and I quite like the second book. And it is, of course, the Sweet Pea series by C.J. Skuse. I read the first book, loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was brilliant. It has a lot of dark humour in it. It's a thriller. It's a kind of one of those weird girl fictions that's kind of going around at the moment. It's one of those. And it's set in the UK, and she becomes, without trying to spoil it too much, a kind of serial killer, kind of. I really don't want to say a lot because I feel like that already is maybe a bit of a spoiler. I really love the first book and I would highly recommend it. It is very dark. Like I said, it's got a lot of dark humour in it. It's very sarcastic, but I absolutely lapped it up and loved it. And and I love the main character Rhiannon. I was thoroughly entertained. I absolutely loved the first book, Sweet Pea. The second book, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called In Bloom, I think. I gave that 4 stars. I did still like it. It was just little things. I can't quite remember why I didn't give it a 4 rating. It's 5 books in the series, and after that I think I gave the rest of the books like 3 stars. I was really disappointed with the rest of the books and where it went, especially the last 2 and especially the last one. And a lot of the fans have also felt this way and said that it just felt very rushed and it just didn't feel like something Rhiannon would do, especially the last book. I really do feel like the books could have ended at the 2nd or 3rd book. I don't feel like there was a need to have 5 books, and I can't help but feel it was a little bit of a cash grab. It's okay to end things. Can we please tell authors this? It's okay. It's okay. I mean, yes, we'll probably hate you, and yes, we'll be upset. We need to stop doing sequels. I've said this. Can we stop? Like, it's just such a money grab in most cases, and I just hate it. And it was fine where it was. We could have just stopped and it would have been okay. All I will say is that it just goes a bit all over the place. And again, without trying to spoil it too much, there's not a lot I can say about sequels without spoiling it too much, but she ends up somewhere, let's just say that, and it's like, really? It does ask you to suspend your disbelief slightly. And I was like, the first book, I remember thinking that, but then it did explain it in the second book, so I was like, okay, I'll let it off the hook. But then once it got to like the 4th or sort of halfway through the 3rd book, I was like, okay, now you're being silly. But I did carry it on because I kind of wanted to finish it, and I was kind of also curious as to where the character was going to be and end up. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I did actually read Sharp Objects, which is also by this author, before. Gave it a 3 star. Wasn't that impressed by it, but I thought, okay, Gone Girl. Everybody's read Gone Girl. Everybody was raving about it. It even got turned into a film. The film was fine. I actually kind of preferred the film to the book. The book was fine. It was okay. I gave it a 3 star. I get why people liked it, and I said this in one of my wrap-ups, and I know I went into it a bit more then. I think I even did some sort of video where I talked in one of my vlogs, sorry. It was just fine. And I had high expectations of this because everybody was loving it back in the day, and it's even today, I think it's still known as one of the best kind of thriller books. But it's about a woman and she's messing with her husband because her husband's unfaithful. So she finds this out and she basically pretends to be missing, but she's not missing, she's playing with him. And again, without trying to spoil it too much, although I'm pretty sure by now most of you have probably read that book, but it was just okay. And I really had high expectations of this because everyone was ranting and raving about it so much back in the day. I did find as well that the writing was a little bit too pretentious, and for me personally, I don't get on with that. If you've seen my vlog, you'll know that I was really loving, and I actually still to this day love. There was a monologue that she says, and it's very much about being a feminist, I think, what it is to be a woman, what society expects of you as a woman. And there's a monologue that she says that I think is so incredibly powerful, and I know a lot of people do like that monologue, and it's like kind of like a TikTok sound, and you know, people make edits on it because it is a powerful monologue, and I really love that monologue and I think it's fantastic. And her writing is good, it is good, it's just not for me. And I don't know, and I think I've just given up with this author now because all her books are just average. They're just fine. I don't just want fine though, I want at least a 4-star in there, at least a 5-star. When it got to that monologue bit, I was like, okay, maybe I love this, maybe I love this, maybe I love this. But then it just kept dragging out, and I was like, okay, maybe I don't. It was very much kind of like that. Just when things were coming off, it was like, oh, but let's just reminisce about something. I was just disappointed. That's really all I can say. The Ritual by Adam Neville. This is the movie tie-in edition. I watched the movie as well after reading the book. Disappointing, very disappointing. I gave this 2 stars. This is a horror. Now, again, this may be my fault because it's supernatural horror. I can't remember how, I think I picked this up in a charity shop, and it's about some university friends, and they all decide to go hiking in Scandinavia, I think, in the Scandinavian forest mountains, and they all decide to go hiking because I think they're in their 40s and they all kind of meet up. I think it's something to do with one of them in this group before they went on this hike thing died, and so they all said, oh, let's go as like kind of like in tribute to him, let's go hiking and sort of go across mountains, you know, things like that in Scandinavia. But they all realise they don't really have much in common anymore. They've all got kind of different lives. Some of them are married with kids, some of them are kind of bachelors, some of them, they're all just very different. They're not like they were back in the uni days, and tensions start to rise. They don't really get on while they're in this forest. They're obviously, as you can imagine, it's quite remote, and they end up really just arguing, hating each other. But there's a lot of other things that go on in the forest. There's like supernatural stuff. It's kind of based on Scandinavian legends and things like that. And if you know me, I'm not really into supernatural stuff all that much, like ghosts, creatures, witches, that kind of thing. I'm quite fussy with it. Like, as a general rule, no, but I can go into it if it's more like psychological, if it's like, oh, is it your mind, you know, if it's that, then I can. But I feel like this wasn't a mind thing. It was quite creepy in parts. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. Didn't hit it for me, and I really wanted to like it, and it's fairly like, it's not a massive book, but it's like nearly 400 pages. And I just hated the characters mostly. Like, they all were just kind of horrible to each other. They didn't really like each other. I can't get on board with this. I really didn't care about any of them. The characters were just like, I don't care if they live or die. Like, it was like that. It was one of those, and I just didn't care. And it got me in a bit of a slump, if I'm being honest. If you're into supernatural stuff massively, then you'll probably get on with this better than I did. It is interesting in that my husband's into that kind of thing, and he did actually really, he hasn't read the book yet, but he really enjoyed the movie because we watched it together, whereas I didn't. So it is maybe just a very my fault, this book, in fairness. Maybe that is what it is. But I think I picked it up just because it sounded interesting, like the premise of like, okay, 4 university friends, they haven't really met up in a long time, but they're like, okay, let's go on this hiking trip in Scandinavia, which I don't know why you would do that if you're not that close anymore, especially going somewhere as like hiking together, which, you know, it requires a lot of teamwork and stuff, and most of them don't even like each other anymore. So that was a bit curious as to why they chose to do that. But I do believe, and I think in the movie they changed it slightly, but it's because one of their friends had died, and it was like kind of on the anniversary of his death or something. But one of them, I think, blames him for his death or something. So that's kind of where it all comes from a little bit. I think the premise in that sounded interesting, and I thought it was going to lean more on towards like, oh, is it messing with their minds? But it was actually a creature, I think. So yeah, maybe that was my fault, but there we go. That's all the books that disappointed me, at least so far. I do have a lot more. I might do another video on it, and let me know, seriously, let me know if you agree or disagree, because I am genuinely a very curious person and I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video.